Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Renato Castel, 35 years old, heir to a legacy I never asked for. To outsiders, the Castel family name in Westchester County evokes envy, mansions, private jets, exclusive parties, and generational wealth. But what no one sees is the rot behind the marble columns. I was raised to be perfect. Polished, controlled, the future patriarch of the Castel Empire. My father, Victor Castel, ruled our family with the same ruthless discipline he built his fortune, cold, unyielding, always calculating. My mother, Dahlia, was the queen of facades. Elegant, aloof, and more concerned with family reputation than family love. And then there's Nico, my younger brother. The golden child. Charismatic, reckless, coddled. Nico could crash a Porsche into the pool and still get kissed on the forehead while I was scolded for not watching him closely enough. That's not an exaggeration. It actually happened. I've spent my life cleaning up Nico's messes, doing what was right even when no one noticed, even when it came at the cost of my own happiness. My reward? Indifference. Or worse, dismissal. That's your job, Renato, my mother would say. You're the responsible one. The only light in my life was my wife, Sophia. We met in grad school, me, the heir to a corporate empire, and her, a scholarship student who could disarm any room with her wit and warmth. She didn't care about my name. She cared about me. Sophia saw the cracks in my armor before anyone else. She knew how much I tried to please my parents, and how little it ever earned me. She warned me not to lose myself for them. And for a while, I believed I could protect our marriage from their poison. But then came the wedding. Nico was getting married to someone he'd only dated for 5 months, a woman named Celeste who looked like a magazine cover and moved through rooms like she owned them. My parents were ecstatic, of course. Finally, my mother gushed, Nico is settling down. They didn't care that I had been married for 3 years already. They didn't throw a tenth of the celebration for me and Sophia. No mention of it in the society pages. No family estate wedding. Just a polite dinner and a good choice, Renato. But for Nico? They reserved the oceanfront villa in Capri. They flew in celebrity chefs, rented a yacht for 300 guests, and paraded around like royalty. Meanwhile, Sophia and I were treated like furniture. Present, but unnoticed. Expected, but unappreciated. The final blow came at the rehearsal dinner. I was seated at the far end of the table, away from my parents, away from the center of attention. Sophia sat beside me, trying to hold it together, but I saw the pain in her eyes. My mother stood and raised a glass, smiling brightly. To Nico, she said, the pride of our family. I didn't hear anything else after that. My ears rang with silence. My blood ran cold. The pride? I'd run the Castel Foundation since I was 27. I doubled its assets. I turned it into one of the most respected philanthropic entities in the Northeast. But Nico, who had been in rehab twice, crashed 2 cars, and never held a job longer than 6 months, he was the pride. I felt Sophia's hand grip mine under the table. She leaned in and whispered, "We have to go." At first, I thought she meant leave the table. Maybe take a walk. But when I looked into her eyes, calm, steady, and burning with resolve, I understood. She meant leave the wedding. She meant leave the family. She meant leave it all behind. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to. But we didn't leave. Not yet. Because what Sophia said next changed everything. And it's the reason the entire Castel legacy would never be the same again. Sophia's fingers stayed tightly locked around mine under the table as laughter and champagne clinks filled the air. The rest of the room was still caught up in my mother's toast, Nico beaming, Celeste glowing, and my father smug in his navy Armani suit like a king admiring his heir. Sophia leaned in closer, her voice low and even. Renato. I'm pregnant. My world spun. My thoughts scattered like broken glass across marble floors. I blinked, once, twice, trying to process her words while smiling politely as a waiter poured more wine. You're what? I whispered, barely able to speak over the noise inside my chest. She nodded, calm but deadly serious. Almost 12 weeks. I was going to wait until after the wedding, but after that toast? After being erased from your family's history again? No. I want our child to know we didn't just sit here and swallow it. A child. My child. The magnitude of that hit me like a crashing wave. And it was immediately followed by something darker, dread. Because I knew exactly how my parents would react. They'd treat it like an inconvenience. Or worse, a threat. They'd find a way to downplay it. Let's not steal Nico's moment, my mother would say, flashing her empty smile. Timing is everything, Renato, my father would mutter, adjusting his tie like always. I could already hear it. But Sophia wasn't done. And there's something else, she said, pulling her hand away and slipping a folded sheet of paper into my palm. What's this? I asked. She didn't answer. She just stared at me with those intelligent, heartbreakingly strong eyes and said, look at it when we're alone. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. The fake smiles. The phony laughter. I caught Nico stealing glances at Sophia more than once, something he'd done for years, though I always brushed it off. Celeste clung to him like a trophy in stilettos. And I sat in that chair, boiling in a quiet kind of rage I didn't know I was capable of. When we got back to our suite in the villa, I finally unfolded the paper. It was a printout. An email from one of my father's attorneys. Dated 3 weeks ago. Subject line, revised estate terms, Castell Holdings. And there it was, in legal black and white. My father had changed the succession structure. Nico was now listed as primary beneficiary of the Castell Trust. I had been removed. Everything I had spent a lifetime building, stewarding, preserving, was being handed to Nico. I stared at the document until the lines blurred. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, her hand resting on her belly. They're cutting you out, she said softly, not cruelly, just truthfully. After all the years you gave them, they're replacing you. You needed to know. I wanted to scream. To throw something. To march back into that dinner and confront my father in front of everyone. But instead, I sat. And I cried. Not loud, not wild. Just silent tears that slid down my face as I realized. I was nothing to them. The obedient son. The one who fixed every mess. Who ran the foundation. Who sacrificed holidays, late nights, weekends, his youth, for the Castell name. They never saw me. They saw a tool. A placeholder. And now. I was being discarded. Sophia sat next to me, her head on my shoulder. Renato, you have a choice, she whispered. You can let them do this. Or you can do something about it. I wiped my face, my voice trembling. What can I do, Sophia? They own everything. I'm not even on the succession anymore. They've already erased me. Her hand slid into mine again. No. They just think they have. But they don't know what you really control. What you've created. You've always been the only one keeping this family running, and I think it's time they realize exactly what happens when you stop. I looked at her, my brilliant, fearless wife, and I realized, she wasn't just giving me news. She was giving me a reason to fight. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for truth. For legacy. For our child. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop, accessed systems my family forgot I had access to, and pulled every thread I could. Emails. Legal documents. Internal memos. Foundation board minutes. Offshore transfer records. And somewhere in that web of information, I found it. One file. One single encrypted folder buried deep in the Castell Holdings server. When I opened it, I stopped breathing. Inside were payment records. Personal checks. Private communications between Nico and a known shell company based in the Caymans. At first glance, it looked like another gambling debt covered up. But it wasn't. It was something worse. Much worse. My brother, my reckless, beloved, golden boy brother, had embezzled over $2 million from the Castell Foundation. My foundation. Money meant for cancer research. For housing programs. For scholarships. Gone. Washed. Hidden. And used. Used to fund his wedding. That file was the moment everything shifted. There it was, my brother Nico's name, tied to transaction after transaction siphoning money from the Castell Foundation's international housing initiatives. Funds meant to build safe shelters for hurricane survivors in the Caribbean had been rerouted through an offshore shell company called Argent Shade Holdings. The final recipient? A luxury wedding vendor in Florence. A $200,000 catering deposit. $50,000 to a private fashion atelier. $14,000, yes, $14,000, for imported Icelandic roses. He used charity money to fund his wedding. My wedding budget had been a dinner in the dining room of the Upper East Side townhouse with lukewarm applause from my parents. His. A stolen fairy tale. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. Sophia watched from the edge of the desk chair, silent but unwavering. She had seen enough to know this was a different level of betrayal. This is criminal, I whispered, almost in disbelief. This isn't just family drama anymore. He could go to prison for this. Sophia leaned forward, her voice razor-sharp. And your father knows. I looked at her, confused. What are you talking about? She pointed at the document trail. See those approvals? Someone had to sign off on the fund release. That's Victor's signature. Your father authorized the disbursement. My heart dropped. It wasn't just Nico. It was my father too. They'd both orchestrated it. Or at the very least, my father covered it up. Either to protect the family name or to shield his favorite son again. I didn't know which was worse. For years, I thought I was preserving a legacy. Turns out, I was laundering their sins in a silk suit. I closed the laptop, hands trembling, and stood. Sophia didn't say anything. She just waited. I turned to her, my voice calm but hollow. I'm going to take it all back. How? She asked, not doubting me, just inviting me to go deeper. I looked around the room, at the villa soaked in extravagance and theft. Then I met her eyes. I'm going to let them finish this wedding, and when it's over, I'm going to take down everything they've built. Sophia stood and embraced me. No, she said gently, you're going to build something better. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I started collecting. Files. Emails. Phone records. And then I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Adrian Kwan, my old college roommate and a brilliant forensic accountant turned whistleblower consultant. The kind of man who didn't just know how to follow money, but how to weaponize it. He agreed to meet me discreetly. No questions. Just loyalty. For the next 48 hours, while the wedding festivities raged around us, pool parties, fireworks, celebrity DJs, I moved like a ghost in my own family's palace, silently downloading the truth. On the outside, I toasted champagne with foreign dignitaries and smiled for Instagram posts beside Nico and Celeste. But inside? I was loading ammo. On the final night of the wedding, the grand reception, I wore the same tuxedo I'd worn at my own wedding, a quiet rebellion against their narrative. Sophia stood by me in a red dress that turned heads, her strength more radiant than any diamond in the room. I watched as my father gave another speech, this time praising Nico's maturity, his growth, and how proud he was to be passing the torch. Sophia squeezed my hand. "Now or never," she whispered. But I shook my head. "No," I said, eyes locked on my father. "Let them bask in it. Let them think they've won. Tomorrow, we begin." The next morning, I made 3 moves. 1. I resigned publicly from the Castell Foundation. I issued a formal statement to every board member, every donor, and every press contact. The resignation letter included subtle references to financial inconsistencies and ethical misalignment. 2. I sent the embezzlement file anonymously to the Financial Observer, a media outlet that had exposed several nonprofit scandals over the past few years. Along with it, I included a timeline, transfer documents, and a note, "Follow the roses." 3. I triggered an audit. Through a clause buried deep in the Foundation's bylaws, one I had written years ago, I invoked my authority to initiate a third-party investigation in the event of suspicious activity. It was automatic. Unstoppable. And it would start in exactly 72 hours. Then I went home. Sophia and I returned to our apartment in Manhattan and sat in quiet triumph. We didn't celebrate. Not yet. There was still one person left who needed to feel this quake firsthand. Nico. And when he called me later that week, voice shaking, rage boiling beneath the surface, I didn't even flinch. "Renato, what the hell did you do?" I took a breath. "I stopped covering for you." Nico's voice was laced with fury and fear. "You blindsided us, Renato. You quit the Foundation and now there's a goddamn investigation. What are you doing?" I let the silence hang for a moment before answering, calm and cold. "I'm doing what I should have done years ago, Nico, removing myself from the mess you've made. And letting the world see you for who you really are." Click. I hung up. For once, I didn't let him scream, spin, or manipulate. I was done absorbing the chaos of everyone else's decisions. I wasn't their shield anymore. And that scared them. Sophia sat across from me, watching as I exhaled, slowly. "He knows," I said. She nodded. "Good. Let him feel it. But now we plan the rest." Over the next 2 weeks, we executed our strategy like a military operation. Phase 1, Burn the Illusion. The audit team I triggered began its investigation. The Castell Foundation board panicked. I knew their cycles, their schedules, their politics, their fears. I leaked additional details to a journalist at the Financial Observer, a woman named Tara Holt who had built her reputation exposing financial abuse in nonprofits. We didn't need to hand her everything, just enough to point her in the right direction. On a quiet Tuesday morning, her article hit the internet. Empire of Deceit, inside the Castell Foundation's lavish cover-up. It exploded like a grenade. Screenshots of fund transfers. Flight logs. Invoices from luxury vendors. Anonymous insider quotes, including a particularly brutal one I fed her. When the heirs stopped protecting the dynasty, it all collapsed like it should have years ago. My father's PR team scrambled. My mother went into hiding, probably holed up in their Paris estate, far away from reporters. Nico. He stopped posting on social media entirely. The comment sections turned savage. But that was only the beginning. Phase 2, Rebuild my identity. I filed paperwork to launch my own independent philanthropic venture, the RSC Initiative, my initials. This time, it wasn't tied to my family's name, money, or values. Sophia and I poured everything we had into it. And because of my reputation, my real one, not the one they painted, investors and partners came knocking. Quietly. Steadily. People were watching. And they were choosing sides. I didn't need to scream. I just needed to keep moving forward while they spun in circles. Phase 3, Personal Confrontation. It wasn't enough to burn the paper facade. I needed to look Nico in the eye. I invited him to lunch. Neutral Ground, a quiet, upscale restaurant we both knew in Midtown. He arrived late, sweating, in a crumpled blazer. Gone was the confident smirk, the effortless swagger. This man looked like a kid who had finally been called to the principal's office. "You happy now?" he sneered as he sat. "No," I said. "But I'm not finished." His jaw clenched. "You're destroying the family name, Renato. Our legacy." I laughed, quiet, sharp, and unkind. "You destroyed that when you stole from cancer patients to pay for a yacht DJ, Nico." He looked around, paranoid. "Keep your voice down." "You didn't keep the money down," I snapped. "You're lucky I haven't pressed charges." "You wouldn't dare." "I would. And I might." He leaned in, desperate. "What do you want?" And for a moment, I paused. What did I want? An apology? Justice? Revenge? No. I wanted clarity. For him to know exactly why this was happening. "I want you to live in the ruins you created," I said. "I want you to feel what it's like to have everything crumble under your name the way I had to watch you be praised while carrying your weight. I want our child," I paused to let that land, "to grow up in a world where your kind of legacy means nothing." Nico's face drained of color. "Child?" I leaned back in my chair. "Yes. Sophia's pregnant. But I didn't tell you before because, frankly, you don't matter." He stared at me, stunned. And I saw it, the flicker of something unfamiliar on his face. Fear. Real, undiluted fear. Because for once, the mess couldn't be cleaned up by someone else. And there was more. Phase 4, Legal Leverage. I had copies of every transfer. My team had documented the fraud trail in triplicate. I sent a certified envelope to my parents' legal counsel containing a list of recommendations. Immediate removal of Nico from all Castell Holdings board positions. Public restitution from the family to the affected charities. A full withdrawal of my father's voting power from the foundation's board. My message was clear. Either clean house quietly, or I'd release the full file to federal regulators and begin legal proceedings. They had 10 days. And they used every one of them before finally issuing a public statement, effective immediately. Nico Castell has resigned from all leadership roles. The Castell family is undergoing a period of restructuring and reflection. They hoped the media storm would pass. It wouldn't. After the Castell Foundation's carefully worded public statement, the headlines quieted. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. Donors pulled their support. 3 board members resigned. The gala for the Children's Oncology Wing, a $5 million annual fundraiser, was abruptly cancelled. The empire that had once stood like marble was now crumbling like drywall. And I didn't lift a finger to stop it. Instead, I poured myself into the RSC initiative. My vision. My ethics. My future. For every call my father ignored from panicked philanthropists, I received 2 new ones from legacy donors eager to invest in something with integrity. In just 3 weeks, we had partnerships with 2 hospitals, a clean water initiative in South Africa, and a scholarship fund dedicated to first-generation college students, named after my mother. Yes, I did that on purpose. Poetic, I know. Sophia was at every strategy meeting, her laptop open, her hand resting lightly on her belly as she reviewed contracts and board selections. She was glowing, and not just from the pregnancy. She was powerful. And she was proud. Of me. One evening, we were sitting on our apartment balcony, the city sparkling around us, when she turned to me and asked, "Do you feel like it's enough yet?" I thought about it. The money we'd regained. The respect. The control. But no. There was still one thread left to pull. Nico. He had resigned from his board roles, yes. But he was still living in the West Village penthouse my father bought him. He still had access to private accounts. And most importantly, he still hadn't faced the public consequences. He was protected by the same system that had always saved him. I wasn't done. So I called Celeste. The wife. The influencer. The accessory. And the secret asset. What most people didn't know, what even Nico didn't realize, was that Celeste and I had spoken once before the wedding. Briefly. Cautiously. In the hotel hallway, while Nico was drunk off his fifth whiskey. And what she'd said stuck with me. He doesn't deserve this spotlight. But I need it. Now, weeks later, she answered my call with surprising calm. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she said. I want to make a deal, I replied. I'm listening. Celeste, as it turned out, had receipts. Text messages. Voice memos. Even a video, one she'd taken after a night when Nico, drunk and belligerent, bragged about using charity cash like his own private wallet. Laughing. Smirking. Naming names. She'd been collecting evidence. Why didn't you do anything with it? I asked. Her answer was chillingly honest. Because I married him for access. And I didn't know how long I'd need to keep smiling. Celeste wanted out. Not a divorce. Not yet. She wanted a platform. A way to escape the crumbling Castell circus with a clean reputation and something of her own. I offered her that. A generous consulting contract with RSC's media division to champion transparency and integrity in philanthropy. Publicly, it would look like she'd seen the light and was using her voice for good. Privately, I asked her to do one more thing. Release the video. Not through us. Through her own account. With a caption that simply read. This is why I stayed silent. No more. It dropped on a Sunday night. It went viral by Monday morning. In the video, Nico's face was perfectly lit. His voice slurred, laughing about buying diamonds with donation money, and mocking the very people the foundation claimed to serve. The internet ate him alive. Major publications picked it up. Calls for federal investigation grew louder. An online petition demanding a full forensic audit reached 200,000 signatures in 3 days. And Celeste? Her follower count tripled. Our contract went into effect immediately. By Friday, Nico had been served with a subpoena. And I was done. Not just with him. But with them. By the time Nico was forced to step out of his penthouse under the weight of subpoenas and national shame, the Castell name was scorched. And yet, he still didn't get it. He still thought this was all about me. That I was the mastermind pulling every string, that I had flipped from dutiful brother to calculated destroyer. And yes, part of that was true. But not all of it. Because what he didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that this entire plan wasn't born the night Sophia whispered we had to leave the wedding. It had been in motion long before that. Months ago, Sophia came to me with a quiet suggestion after we discovered my father had quietly removed me from the trust. She sat me down at our kitchen counter, held my hand, and said, "You've spent your whole life waiting for them to give you something. I think it's time you take it instead." That's when the first plan was drafted. Not a revenge plan. Not exactly. It was a contingency. Just in case they did what they always do, betray the one person who actually kept the family intact. She had quietly hired a private financial investigator to look into Castell Holdings 6 months before the wedding. Without telling me. She'd already known about the offshore account. She'd already known that the foundation was compromised. The baby announcement. The wedding drama. That wasn't the spark of revenge. It was the cover. Sophia was never just along for the ride. She built the car. So when I confronted her after Celeste's video went viral, asking why she hadn't told me about the embezzlement earlier, she didn't flinch. "I did what you never could, Renato," she said. "I stopped waiting for them to love you back. I sat down slowly, the weight of it all hitting me at once. She hadn't just protected me. She had empowered me." Sophia had laid the foundation. Quietly, carefully, while I was still convincing myself I owed my family another chance. "I knew you'd never turn on them unless you were pushed," she said, her voice calm. "So I waited. And when they erased you from the trust, I started gathering everything." "And the baby?" I asked, my throat tight. She smiled. "Very real. But even if I hadn't been pregnant, I would have still fought for you." It was overwhelming. All those years I thought I was the protector. The fixer. The planner. But the truth? Sophia had saved me from myself. She had prepared for war while I was still holding on to hope. And somehow, she had done it with grace. I stared at her, this woman who had been underestimated by my mother, ignored by my father, and occasionally patronized by Nico. They thought she was a supporting character. But she was the entire engine behind the collapse of the Castel dynasty. And I had never loved her more than I did in that moment. The reversal wasn't mine. It was hers. The woman they dismissed as an outsider, had outmaneuvered an empire. And now, she was about to become the matriarch of something new. Sophia placed her hand on her stomach and smiled. "You're free now, Renato. It's time to build something that's truly yours." I nodded, finally understanding. The final move wasn't revenge. It was liberation. The Castel name no longer carried the same power in Manhattan. 6 weeks after the video leak, the IRS opened an investigation into the foundation's finances. A quiet but ruthless review of every grant, every transaction, every philanthropic expense. My father, Victor, resigned from public view completely. A few blurry paparazzi shots caught him arriving at a private jet hangar, heading to Switzerland. My mother remained silent, no denials, no defense. Just silence. That was her version of surrender. As for Nico, he was ruined. The penthouse was gone. The cars repossessed. The private accounts frozen. He avoided jail, for now, thanks to a deal struck by the family's legal team. But he was sentenced to 10 years of financial monitoring and restitution payments that would drain every dollar he tried to make going forward. And for the first time in his life, Nico had to work. Celeste, in contrast, was thriving. Her "I'm not innocent, but I'm done being silent" video made her an overnight icon. People love a redemption arc, and she played hers well. I didn't hate her for it. She was smart. Strategic. She got out clean, and her contract with RSC gave her something meaningful to build from. But this isn't about them anymore. This is about me. About us. Sophia and me. And the legacy we chose to create. The RSC initiative went live 6 months after the Castel Foundation was shuttered. We launched with a single goal: restore trust where it had been abused. Our first project? Rebuilding the Caribbean housing program my brother gutted with his greed. Sophia stood beside me at the groundbreaking ceremony, radiant in the morning sun, her belly now round and unmistakably full of life. We didn't bring press. Just the families. The ones who had been left behind. The ones who mattered. I gave a short speech. Nothing grand. Just the truth. Sometimes you inherit a legacy. And sometimes, you build one from the ashes. The applause was quiet. Respectful. Genuine. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't about the Castel name. It was about mine. Renato. A man who finally stopped begging to be seen, and started living like he mattered. Our son, Luca, was born in the spring. He has his mother's strength, and a quiet calm that reminds me of who I might have been, had I not been raised to be a statue instead of a soul. I hold him now, often, and whisper promises into his tiny ear. You won't have to prove yourself to me. You are already enough. As for my family, we haven't spoken since the collapse. Not one call. Not one apology. But I've let go of waiting for that. Because the ultimate revenge wasn't destroying their empire. It was realizing I never needed it to begin with. They thought they could erase me. Instead, I wrote the story they'll never be able to rewrite. And when my son asks me one day why we don't speak to the Castell side of the family, I'll tell him the truth. Not the twisted truth they tried to teach me, but the one I earned. That sometimes, family is not who you're born into. It's who you rise with. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.